continue St. Francis de Sales' introduction to the devout life. We are in his part looking at the different virtues. We're looking at the goodness of spending some time in recreation. And in this chapter, we're going to look specifically at games of chance, which he'll also refer to as forbidden games, though there's a bit of a kind of caveat to this. Anyway, he speaks of games of dice, cards, and the like, in which success depends mainly on chance. He says he's going to call these not only dangerous, but he's going to say they're forbidden. And they're not. We'll see what the Catechism of the Church says, but the reason why he says this is for a few reasons. He says that the success of these games is decided not by reason, but by chance. So it's not dependent upon the skill of somebody, which gives somebody the opportunity to be able to work on that skill and prepare. But if it's just completely by chance, then it doesn't. It takes away that kind of involvement of the person. He says, "For success, which is to be a reward of competence, is made the reward of chance, which is not worthy of any prize, since it doesn't depend on us in any way." So, if it's just dependent upon chance, it doesn't seem to be worthy of whether we fail or succeed. And then finally he says there's no joy at all in gambling except for the winner. Is not this joy unrighteous, since it cannot be had except through the loss and grief of the companions in the game? And that seems to be true, is that, it wouldn't be a good and fun game if your winning is dependent upon the grief of the other person. But let's look more specifically at what the Catechism of the Catholic Church says with regard to games of chance. So the Catechism says that games of chance, or wagers, are not in and of themselves contrary to justice. So this is a little bit different from what St. Francis, his view upon it. They become morally unacceptable when they deprive someone of what is necessary to provide for his needs and those of others. So if someone is doing games of chance and they're wagering money, and it's to such a degree that it no longer allows somebody to be able to fulfill their duties because they're spending so much, then certainly it becomes a forbidden game. The passion for gambling risks becoming an enslavement. Unfair wagers and cheating at games constitute grave matter unless the damage inflicted is so slight that the one who suffers it cannot reasonably be considered it significant. So what this looks like, it says that, gambling can certainly become an addiction, and we certainly can see that in our world today. There's some people who cannot engage in that activity without soon becoming so attached to it that they will spend exorbitant amounts of money that will harm themselves and their families. And so that certainly, he says, is a grave matter, is a sin. With the game itself, the Catechism, deriving from that, the game needs to be fair, and all players must have an equal chance of winning. Not that their personal skills have to be equal, but remember, it's not dependent as much on skill as it is on chance. But the way that the game itself is set up is so that the mathematical chances are equivalent to everybody who plays. And so this is going to be a problem we could see at, like, for example, casinos don't set it up so that everybody has an equal chance. Oftentimes those are set up so that the chances are very, very low for the person actually playing to win, and most of the time they're going to win. Now, it doesn't mean that a casino of itself is, should be, is immoral, but the person going to play needs to recognize that the chances are not equal, and that you're not going so as for the main purpose of winning, but to realize that whatever it is whatever money is being put forth, to consider it basically a loss. That it doesn't really matter if we don't win. But one has to be very careful in this area, because gambling can certainly become an addiction. St. Augustine has a certain quote when it comes to gambling. He says that the devil invented gambling. Well, that may be so because of the way that it can become addictive to some people and trap them. It says, but remember, as our Lord hung upon the cross, the soldiers themselves played the game of chance. oblivious to the greater good that was going on. There's nothing necessarily wrong with gambling as long as we keep it within the confines of virtue. But we also want to make sure to be careful and very vigilant. So even if these kind of games of chance are not necessarily always forbidden, there are certainly other kinds of recreation that we could conceive that are indeed forbidden. So we want to make sure that whenever we're considering what our pastime is going to be, that we are indeed evaluating it based upon God's law. If we're ever unsure as to that, we can try to look up the answer about it, or certainly ask a priest to help evaluate whether that recreation is going to be good for our souls or not. God bless.